I found my 8-year-old son Mason inside a wooden coffin in our basement, duct tape over his mouth, his little body shaking with terror. The man standing over him wasn't a stranger. He was my wife's brother Victor, the one she told me died in a car crash 3 years ago. He smiled at me like death itself and said, "Welcome home, Navy boy. Your son looks good in there, doesn't he?" Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. 3 hours earlier, I was driving home from the airport, thinking about surprising Brooke and Mason. 12 years as a Navy SEAL sniper for deployments, and I was finally ready to be just a dad and husband. The October rain hammered my windshield as I pulled into our driveway in suburban Denver. Something felt wrong the moment I stepped out of my truck. The porch light was off. Brooke always left it on. Mason's bike wasn't in its usual spot by the garage door. But it was 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, so maybe he was already asleep. I used my key quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping family. The heavy, suffocating quiet that comes before something terrible happens. "Brooke?" I called softly. No answer. I dropped my duffel bag and walked through the living room. Mason's homework was scattered across the coffee table, half-finished math problems in his messy handwriting. His favorite stuffed elephant sat on the couch, where he always left it. That's when I heard it, a muffled sound coming from downstairs, like someone trying to scream through something covering their mouth. My SEAL training kicked in instantly. I moved silently toward the basement door, every nerve alert. The sound came again, definitely human, definitely distressed. My heart started racing, but my hands stayed steady. 12 years of combat operations had taught me to function through fear. The basement door was slightly open. I could see a faint light coming from below. I pulled my Glock from my concealed holster. Old habits from deployment never really die. Step by step, I descended those wooden stairs that I'd walked down 1,000 times to grab tools or check the furnace. But tonight, they felt like stairs leading into hell. The muffled crying got louder. Then I heard a man's voice, speaking in Spanish. My blood turned to ice because I recognized that voice from somewhere deep in my memory. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw him. Tall, muscular, covered in tattoos that told stories I didn't want to know. His back was to me, but something about his posture, his presence, made my skin crawl. He was standing over something wooden, rectangular. A coffin. My son's muffled cries were coming from inside that coffin. "Mason!" The word tore from my throat before I could stop it. The man turned around slowly, like he'd been expecting me. And that's when I saw a face that should have been rotting in a grave for 3 years. Victor Morales. Brooke's older brother. The one she cried over at his funeral. The one whose death had brought her nightmares for months. He wasn't dead. He was very much alive. And he was smiling at my terrified son like a predator who'd caught the perfect prey. "Adrian," he said, pronouncing my name like it tasted bitter. "Right on time. Your wife said you'd be home around 9. My gun was trained on his chest, but Mason was right there in that coffin. One wrong move from me, and Victor could hurt my boy before I could stop him. Let him out. Now." My voice was calm, controlled. The same tone I'd used when talking down armed insurgents in Afghanistan. Victor laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "See, that's your problem, Navy boy. You think you're still in charge here. But this isn't your war anymore." He reached into the coffin and pulled Mason's small hand into view. My son's eyes were wide with terror above the duct tape, tears streaming down his face. "This is my territory now. My family's business. And you?" Victor's smile turned cold as winter. "You're going to help us, or little Mason here is going to find out what it's like to take a really long nap in this box." The basement felt like it was spinning. My wife's brother, the man she'd mourned, the man whose death had shaped our early marriage, was threatening to bury my son alive. And from the way he was looking at me, I realized this wasn't a random kidnapping. This wasn't a stranger who'd broken into our home. This was planned. This was personal. And somehow, my wife Brooke was part of it. "You look surprised." Adrian, Victor said, still holding Mason's trembling hand. Did Brooke never mention that her baby brother was still breathing? That we've been having family dinners every Sunday while you were playing soldier overseas? My world tilted sideways. Every deployment, every phone call home, every time Brooke cried about missing her dead brother. All lies. All carefully constructed deception. Daddy, Mason's muffled cry through the tape made my finger tighten on the trigger. But Victor was too close to my son. One bullet, even from 12 years of sniper training, was too risky. Let him go, Victor. Whatever this is about, he's just a kid. Just a kid. Victor's laugh was poison. This kid is my insurance policy. See, your wife forgot to mention something important when she married you. The Morales family doesn't just run a landscaping business. He gestured around the basement with his free hand. For the first time, I really looked at what surrounded us. Plastic sheets covered the walls. Industrial-grade cleaning supplies sat in the corner. This wasn't our basement anymore. It was a workspace designed for things I didn't want to imagine. We moved product from Juarez to Denver. High-quality merchandise that keeps half this city floating on clouds. And this nice, quiet suburban house with the hero Navy SEAL husband? Perfect cover. My mind raced through every detail of our marriage. Brooke's unexplained cash purchases. The way she always handled our finances. Her insistence that I never go in the basement when I was home between deployments. How long? My voice cracked. Since before you two even met. She was working the military bars near the base, looking for the right kind of husband. Someone with security clearance, someone respected, someone who'd be gone for months at a time. The words hit me harder than any enemy fire. Our entire relationship, our wedding day, Mason's birth, every I love you, had been a mission. I wasn't her husband. I was her cover story. Footsteps on the stairs made us both turn. Brooke descended slowly, her face pale but calm. She wore the same blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Adrian, she said softly, I was hoping you'd be later. Get him out of that coffin, Brooke. Now, I kept my gun trained on Victor, but my eyes were locked on my wife's face, searching for any sign of the woman I thought I'd married. I can't do that yet. Her voice was steady, businesslike. Not until you understand the situation. The situation? The situation is that your psychotic brother has our son in a coffin. Our son. Victor's eyebrows raised. Oh, Adrian, there's so much you don't know. Brooke walked closer, her hands empty, but her posture defensive. Mason isn't in danger. This is just a demonstration. To help you understand how serious this is. You let your brother terrorize our child as a demonstration? He's not our child, Adrian. The word stopped my heart. I felt like I was drowning in place. What did you say? Brooke's eyes filled with tears, but not the kind that came from guilt. These were tears of frustration, like I was being deliberately difficult. Mason isn't your biological son. I was already pregnant when we met. Victor needed me to find a father figure fast, someone who wouldn't ask questions about timing. The basement spun around me. Mason's face, his laugh, the way he called me daddy with pure joy, none of it was real. I wasn't his father. I was just another piece in whatever game the Morales family was playing. But I love him, I whispered. And he loves you, Brooke said, which is why this will work. You're going to help us expand our operation. Use your military connections, your security clearance. And Mason stays safe and happy. Victor lifted Mason partially out of the coffin, the boy's terrified eyes finding mine. Our little man here learns what happens to people who threaten family business. Your choice, Navy boy. I looked at Mason, this child I'd raised, taught to ride a bike, read bedtime stories to, and realized that blood didn't matter. Biology didn't matter. He was my son in every way that counted. But I also realized something else. Victor and Brooke had made one critical mistake. They thought 12 years as a Navy SEAL had made me soft, made me dependent on rules and orders and proper channels. They forgot that snipers are trained to be patient, to watch, to wait for the perfect shot. and they had no idea that the man standing in front of them had 127 confirmed kills and had never missed a target that mattered. "Okay," I said, lowering my weapon slightly. "I'll help. But first, Mason comes out of that coffin." Victor's smile widened. "Smart choice. Welcome to the family business, Adrian." But as he reached to lift Mason out, I was already calculating angles, distances, and timing. They wanted to use my military training against innocent people. Instead, they'd just given a predator the perfect hunting ground. Victor lifted Mason from the coffin, but kept the duct tape over his mouth. My son's legs shook as he stood, and I could see dark stains on his pants where terror had taken control of his small body. "The tape stays on until we finish our conversation," Victor said, reading my expression. "Children should be seen, not heard during business meetings." I wanted to tear his throat out with my bare hands, but Mason was still within arm's reach of this monster. Every muscle in my body coiled like a spring, but my face remained calm. Brooke walked to a metal cabinet I'd never noticed before and pulled out a thick manila folder. "These are shipping manifests, Adrian. Routes through military bases where your clearance gets us past security checkpoints." She spread the papers across an old card table. Names, dates, quantities. Enough fentanyl to kill half of Colorado moving through bases where soldiers' families lived. "You want me to smuggle drugs through military installations?" It wasn't a question. "We want you to use the access you already have," Victor corrected. "Twice a month, you'll drive a landscaping truck through the main gate at Peterson Air Force Base. Friendly wave to the guards who know you. Normal delivery of mulch and fertilizer to the base housing maintenance crew." The plan was sickeningly clever. I'd been doing consulting work for base housing since I retired 6 months ago. The guards knew my face, trusted me. I could drive a truck full of anything through those gates without a second look. And if I refuse? Victor walked Mason over to a corner where I now noticed a chair with restraints built into the arms and legs. Adult-sized restraints that had clearly seen use. Mason starts his education in the family business. We have clients who pay premium prices for young, clean American boys. He'd bring us more money in 1 week than your military pension pays in a year. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing livestock prices, made something dark and primal wake up in the deepest part of my brain. The part that had allowed me to put crosshairs on human beings and squeeze the trigger without hesitation. "That's enough, Victor," Brooke said sharply. "He gets the point." But Victor wasn't finished. He pulled a tablet from his jacket and showed me photos. Children in cages. Kids Mason's age with dead eyes and needle marks on their arms. "Your boy has spirit. That's worth extra. My clients in Mexico City would pay 6 figures for breaking that spirit properly." Mason whimpered behind the tape, and I realized he could understand enough of what Victor was saying to be truly terrified. "I'll do it," I said quickly. "I'll move your drugs. Just don't hurt him." "Smart." Victor tucked the tablet away. "First shipment is Thursday morning. 50 pounds of pure product hidden in bags of organic fertilizer. You'll deliver it to the base maintenance supervisor, Logan Chun. He's been on our payroll for 8 months. Another betrayal. Logan was a good man, or so I'd thought. We'd had beers together, talked about our kids. His daughter Ivy was in Mason's grade at school. "How many people are involved in this?" I asked. Brooke smiled, but it was cold as winter. "Adrian, this operation has been running for 3 years. Half the people you consider friends are already working for us." She pulled out her phone and showed me a contact list. Names I recognized from the base, from Mason's school, from our neighborhood. The mailman who always waved cheerfully. Mason's 3rd grade teacher who sent home such caring notes. "Welcome to the real world, honey. The one where people do whatever it takes to survive." Victor started untying the rope around Mason's wrists. "First lesson for Daddy. Business relationships require trust. Mason will stay with me until after your first delivery. Insurance policy." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "He comes home with me tonight." "That's not how trust works." Victor's hand moved to a knife on his belt. The boy stays here until Thursday night. Successful delivery, happy reunion. Unsuccessful delivery. He didn't need to finish. The photos on his tablet had said everything. Brooke stepped between us. There's a bedroom upstairs. Mason will be comfortable. I'll stay with him. I looked at my wife. This stranger wearing the face of the woman I'd loved for 4 years. You'd really let your brother sell an 8-year-old child? I'd do whatever necessary to protect this family's business, she said without hesitation. The word family coming from her mouth made me sick. This wasn't a family. This was a criminal organization that happened to share DNA. Victor finally removed the tape from Mason's mouth. My son immediately ran to me, throwing his small arms around my waist. Daddy, I'm scared, he whispered against my shirt. I knelt down to his eye level, my hands shaking as I smoothed his hair. I know, buddy, but Daddy's going to fix this, okay? I promise. Mason nodded, trusting me completely. The same way he'd trusted me to catch him when he jumped off the monkey bars. The same way he'd trusted me to chase away the monsters under his bed. But this time, the monsters were real, and they had been living in our house all along. Time to go, Adrian, Victor said. You've got 3 days to mentally prepare for your new career. Don't do anything stupid like calling the police. We have people everywhere. As I walked toward the stairs, leaving my son with these predators, I felt something I hadn't experienced since my first combat deployment. Pure, focused hatred. The kind that didn't burn hot. It burned cold and patient and deadly. Victor had made his first mistake when he put Mason in that coffin. His second mistake was letting me leave alive. I drove through Denver's empty streets at 2 a.m., my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles had gone white. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every passing car could be Victor's people watching me. But I wasn't going home to sit and wait like a good little soldier. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner on Colfax Avenue and made 3 phone calls. First, to my old unit commander in Virginia Beach. Second, to a private investigator who specialized in cartel investigations. Third, to someone I'd hoped never to contact again, a black ops contractor who owed me a favor from Kandahar. Within 6 hours, I had intelligence that made my blood run colder than the October morning air. The Morales family wasn't just moving drugs through Peterson Air Force Base. They were supplying fentanyl to a network that stretched from Denver to Chicago, using military personnel as unwitting mules. 17 active duty soldiers were already dead from accidental overdoses, killed when they tried to quit the operation or asked too many questions. Mason wasn't Victor's first child hostage. In the past 2 years, 3 other military families had been coerced the same way. One father, Staff Sergeant Blake Morrison, had tried to go to the FBI. They found pieces of his 6-year-old daughter scattered across 4 counties. I sat in my truck outside our house Wednesday morning, watching Victor's shadow move past the living room window. He was comfortable, confident, playing video games on Mason's PlayStation like he belonged there. My phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. Remember, 1 delivery, then Mason comes home. Don't be a hero. But she was wrong about one thing. I wasn't planning to be a hero. I was planning to be something much more dangerous. That afternoon, I drove the landscaping truck to Peterson Air Force Base for a practice run. The guards waved me through without checking the cargo area, just like Victor had predicted. Logan Shin met me at the maintenance building, nervous sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool weather. Adrian, thank God you're helping us out, he said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. This stuff pays for Ivy's medical treatments. Her leukemia, the bills were drowning us. The desperation in his voice reminded me why Victor's operation was so effective. He didn't just recruit criminals. He found good people in impossible situations and gave them terrible choices. How many kids, Logan? I asked quietly. What do you mean? How many children has Victor threatened to get cooperation? Logan's face crumpled. I can't. Adrian, they have photos of Ivy at school, at the playground. They know her route to the bus stop, her teacher's name, what time I pick her up from daycare. I put my hand on his shoulder. It's going to be okay, but I need you to do exactly what I tell you. That evening, I returned to our house. Victor answered the door like he owned the place, Mason clinging to his leg with the desperate attachment of a terrified child seeking any adult protection. "Daddy!" Mason ran to me, and I scooped him up, feeling how much weight he'd lost in just 2 days. "How's my boy?" I whispered in his ear. "Uncle Victor says if I'm good, I get to stay with you after tomorrow," Mason whispered back. "But I don't like him, Daddy. He smells like mean." Kids always knew. Their instincts hadn't been trained out of them yet. Victor gestured to the couch. "Sit down, Adrian. We need to discuss tomorrow's timeline." But as I sat down, I noticed something that made my sniper's eye for detail kick into overdrive. Victor's jacket was hanging on the chair, and I could see the outline of a phone in the pocket. Not just any phone, a satellite phone with a specific antenna configuration. The kind used by cartel operations to communicate across international borders without government interception. More importantly, it was the kind that sent GPS coordinates with every call. "Everything goes smooth tomorrow," Victor was saying. "And Mason starts sleeping in his own bed again. You make any mistakes, and he starts learning about the family business the hard way." I nodded, playing the role of the broken father who'd do anything to protect his child. But inside, I was calculating something Victor couldn't see. Distance from his chair to the kitchen. Angle of sight lines through the house. How many seconds it would take me to reach that satellite phone. Because tomorrow wasn't just about delivering drugs to save Mason. Tomorrow was about sending Victor's exact location to people who'd been hunting him for 3 years. People who didn't believe in trials or due process or mercy. People like me. "One more thing," Victor said, pulling out a small device that looked like a garage door opener. "Mason wears this tomorrow morning. It's a GPS tracker with a remote detonator. You try anything stupid, and I push this button." He clipped the device to Mason's shirt like it was a normal school ID badge. "Daddy, what's this for?" Mason asked innocently. "It's just to keep you safe, buddy," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. But Victor had just made his biggest mistake yet. He'd given me a target I could track anywhere in the world. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, like the sky knew what was about to happen. I loaded the landscaping truck at 5 a.m., my hands steady as I positioned 50 pounds of fentanyl disguised as organic fertilizer in the cargo bed. But hidden beneath the false bottom of the truck bed was something Victor didn't know about. Military-grade tracking devices I'd acquired through channels that didn't officially exist. Mason sat at the breakfast table, picking at his cereal, while Victor watched cartoons like he was babysitting instead of holding a child hostage. The GPS device clipped to my son's shirt blinked green every 30 seconds, a constant reminder of the explosive collar around our lives. "Remember the plan, Navy boy," Victor said without looking away from the TV. "Straight to the base, delivered to Logan, straight home. Any detours, any phone calls, any heroes, and boom." He made an explosion gesture with his hands that made Mason flinch. I kissed the top of Mason's head, memorizing the smell of his strawberry shampoo. "Daddy will be back soon, okay? Promise." Mason's eyes were too old for his 8-year-old face. "I promise." And I meant it in ways Victor couldn't imagine. The drive to Peterson Air Force Base took 27 minutes. I used every second to memorize details about the truck, the cargo, the route. Information I'd need later when federal investigators asked how deep this operation went. Logan Chun was waiting at the maintenance building, hands shaking as he signed the delivery receipt. "Adrian, I'm sorry. I never wanted to involve your family. How long has Victor been recruiting military families?" I asked while we unloaded the fake fertilizer bags. "Since he got out of prison 18 months ago. He targets people with security clearances who have something to lose. Kids, sick parents, mortgage problems." Logan's voice cracked. "He finds your weakness and makes it his weapon." "What prison?" Logan looked surprised. "You don't know?" Victor Morales served 8 years in federal prison for kidnapping and trafficking. Got out early for cooperation with authorities. My blood turned to ice. Victor wasn't just a cartel enforcer. He was a federal informant. That's how he knew which military personnel to target, which bases had security gaps, which officials could be bought or intimidated. He was working both sides, and everyone in his path was expendable. Logan, listen to me carefully. Tonight at 8 p.m., take Ivy to your sister's house in Colorado Springs. Pack like you're going on vacation, but don't come back. What are you talking about? This operation is about to collapse. When it does, Victor's going to eliminate anyone who can testify against him. That includes you, me, and our children. Logan's face went pale. Oh God, what have we done? I finished unloading the truck and drove back through the base gates, waving at the guards who thought they knew me. But inside my head, I was assembling a different kind of operation. The kind I'd run in Afghanistan when we needed to eliminate high-value targets without leaving fingerprints. The drive home took 31 minutes instead of 27. For extra minutes to plant the tracking devices I'd hidden in the truck at locations throughout Victor's likely escape routes. When I walked through our front door, Mason ran to me with relief flooding his small face. Daddy, you came back. Of course I did, buddy. I picked him up, and while Victor couldn't see, I carefully examined the GPS device clipped to Mason's shirt. Military-grade construction, but civilian electronics inside. The kind of device someone could disable if they knew exactly where to apply pressure. Everything goes smooth? Victor asked, but he was already relaxing, confident that he now owned me completely. Perfect. Logan sends his regards. I set Mason down and walked to the kitchen, positioning myself near Victor's jacket where the satellite phone waited. Good. Tomorrow we discuss the next shipment. 100 pounds this time, through the commissary loading dock. But Victor wouldn't be alive tomorrow to discuss anything. That evening, after Mason went to bed, I sat in our living room with Victor and Brooke, pretending to watch television while mentally calculating angles and timing. Victor had made himself comfortable, feet up on my coffee table, drinking my beer like he owned the place. At 9:47 p.m., his satellite phone rang. See, a key, Victor, he answered, walking toward the kitchen for privacy. I counted to 10, then followed him, moving with the silent precision I'd learned stalking Taliban commanders through mountain caves. Victor was speaking rapid Spanish to someone who was clearly higher up in the cartel hierarchy. As he talked, he pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through photos of children, dozens of them, all around Mason's age. My son's picture was already in the collection, but more terrifying was what I saw in the background of the photos. These weren't just random kidnapped children. These were kids from military families across 3 states, all taken after their parents had been forced to work for Victor's operation. All of them looked broken in ways that made my hands clench into fists. Victor ended the call and turned around to find me standing 3 feet behind him. Problem, Adrian? Just checking if you needed anything. My voice was calm, conversational. Actually, yeah. Tomorrow you're going to reach out to your old unit buddies. We're expanding to Camp Pendleton and Fort Bragg. More bases, more access, more profit. He had no idea that mentioning my old unit was the last mistake he'd ever make. Because those buddies weren't just retired soldiers. They were a network of special operations veterans who'd gone private, working contracts that governments couldn't officially authorize. Men who specialized in making problems disappear without questions or investigations. I'll make some calls, I said. Victor smiled and walked back to the living room, completely unaware that he'd just signed his own death warrant. At 11:15 p.m., I waited until both Victor and Brooke were asleep, then slipped into Mason's room. He was having nightmares, whimpering in his sleep about dark boxes and scary men. I gently woke him up. Hey buddy, want to go on an adventure? Mason rubbed his sleepy eyes as I carried him to the garage, the GPS device still blinking on his shirt like a heartbeat counting down to disaster. Where are we going, Daddy? Somewhere safe while Daddy fixes the bad men, I whispered, settling him into the back seat of my old Honda that Victor hadn't seen me drive. The truck stayed in the driveway. Let them think I was still asleep upstairs. I drove to a safe house my old unit commander had arranged, a cabin 40 minutes outside Denver where a retired Marine named Quentin waited with his wife Ruby. They specialized in protecting military families when operations went sideways. "This is like camping, right, Daddy?" Mason asked as Ruby led him to a bedroom filled with toys and books. "Exactly like camping, but with better snacks." I kissed his forehead, then carefully removed the GPS device from his shirt using wire cutters designed for defusing IEDs. The green light went dark. In exactly 6 hours, Victor would wake up and discover his insurance policy had vanished. I drove back toward town, but not to my house. Instead, I parked on a hill overlooking our neighborhood and opened the military-grade laptop I'd retrieved from my old gear. The tracking devices I'd planted were all active, showing Victor's movements throughout the city over the past month. What I saw made my blood run cold. Victor hadn't just been using our house. He'd been operating from 17 different locations across Denver, safe houses, warehouses, even a daycare center that stayed open late. The daycare showed the heaviest traffic, with vehicles arriving and leaving at all hours of the night. I cross-referenced the addresses with missing children reports from the past 2 years. 12 matches. Victor wasn't just smuggling drugs through military bases. He was running a trafficking network that sold American military children to cartel clients in Mexico. And according to the GPS data, he was planning to move his entire operation tomorrow night. I made a phone call to Nathaniel Cross, a former Delta Force operator who now ran security consulting for people who couldn't involve official law enforcement. "Adrian, Jesus, it's been 3 years. Heard you retired to play suburban dad. The suburbs found me, Nate. I need a favor, the kind that doesn't appear in any paperwork." I uploaded Victor's GPS data, the photos from his tablet, and the addresses of every location he'd visited in the past 60 days. "Holy shit," Nate whispered after reviewing the files. "This isn't just cartel business. This is industrial-scale trafficking using military cover. How deep are you in this?" "They took my son, used him as bait to force me into smuggling drugs through Peterson AFB. The target is Victor Morales, Mexican cartel enforcer working as a federal informant." "Federal informant? That complicates things." "No, it simplifies them. He's burning both sides, which means nobody's going to miss him when he disappears." Silence on the line while Nate processed the implications. "What do you need?" "Full surveillance on all 17 locations. When Victor moves his operation tomorrow night, I want to know where he's going and who's with him." "And Nate?" "There are kids involved. American kids from military families." "Say no more. I'll have teams in position by sunset." "What about you?" I looked down at our house, where lights were starting to come on as Victor discovered Mason was gone. "I'm going to do what I do best. Wait for the perfect shot." At 6:30 a.m., my phone exploded with calls from Brooke. I let them go to voicemail while I watched through binoculars as Victor tore through our house looking for clues about where Mason might be. The first voicemail was Brooke crying. "Adrian, please, just bring Mason home. We can work this out." The second was Victor's voice, ice cold with rage. "You have 2 hours to return my property, or I start mailing you pieces of children who look just like your boy." The third made me smile with predatory satisfaction. "We know you're military trained, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. I have resources that will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Victor was panicking. Predators only made threats when they felt cornered. At 8 a.m., I called Brooke back. "Adrian, thank God. Where's Mason?" "Victor is losing his mind. Mason is somewhere Victor will never find him. But I know where Victor is going to be tonight." "What are you talking about?" "I've been tracking him for weeks, Brooke. Every location, every contact, every child he's trafficked. Did you really think I was just going to roll over and become his drug mule?" Silence on the line. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from my wife before. "You don't understand what you've done. Victor isn't just some street criminal. He has protection from people in the federal government. People who will make you disappear. Let them try." I ended the call and turned off the phone. By noon, Victor's panic had turned into something else. Through my binoculars, I watched him load military-grade weapons into 3 different vehicles. He was preparing for war. But Victor had made a critical error in judgment. He thought he was hunting a desperate father trying to protect his son. He had no idea he was about to become prey for a sniper who'd spent 12 years perfecting the art of making people disappear from impossible distances. At 3 p.m., Nathaniel called with an update that changed everything. "Adrian, we've got a problem. Victor's not working alone. He's got backup coming in from Juarez. 12 sicarios with military training. Professional killers. How long do we have? They'll be in Denver by tonight." And Adrian, they're not coming to negotiate. They're coming to send a message about what happens to people who cross the Morales family. I smiled as I checked the scope on my Barrett M82 sniper rifle, a weapon I'd hoped never to use again. Good. I was getting bored with easy targets. At 7 p.m., I positioned myself on the roof of an abandoned warehouse 800 meters from the daycare center, where Victor's GPS tracker showed the heaviest activity. Through my rifle scope, I could see armed men moving children from the building into unmarked vans. 12 kids, all between 6 and 10 years old, all from military families who'd been coerced into Victor's operation. My finger rested on the trigger, but I forced myself to wait. One shot would alert the others, and those children would become human shields before I could take a second target. Nathaniel's voice crackled through my earpiece. "Adrian, we've got eyes on the Juarez reinforcements. They're moving toward your position in 3 vehicles. ETA 15 minutes. Copy that. How many friendlies do we have in position?" 6 shooters with clear sight lines. "But Adrian, if this goes loud, those kids are dead. Victor's people will execute them rather than let them become witnesses." Through my scope, I watched Victor emerge from the daycare, talking on his satellite phone. Even from 800 meters, I could read the tension in his body language. He was giving orders, preparing to move the children to a secondary location. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Your son's friends are asking about him. Would hate for them to join our daycare program." Victor was threatening Mason's classmates now. The desperation was making him sloppy, expanding his target list beyond what he could actually control. At 7:23 p.m., everything changed. A Denver police cruiser pulled up to the daycare center. 2 officers got out, walking casually toward the front door like they were responding to a routine call. Victor's men immediately moved to intercept them, but their body language was wrong. Too relaxed, too coordinated. These weren't random patrol officers. This was a setup. "Nathaniel, are those your people?" "Negative. We didn't call on local law enforcement." Through my scope, I watched one of the officers speak into his radio, then nod to his partner. They split up, moving to opposite sides of the building. That's when I saw the real trap. These weren't police officers or Nathaniel's people. The tactical gear was wrong, the positioning was wrong, and the radio calls were too short for official procedure. These were Victor's people, dressed as cops to provide cover for moving the children. But Victor had made another critical mistake. He'd positioned himself in the open, confident that fake police uniforms would keep real law enforcement away. I adjusted my scope for wind speed and distance. 812 meters. Slight crosswind from the northwest. Target standing still, talking on phone. Perfect shot. But as my finger tightened on the trigger, a black SUV screeched into the parking lot. Real federal agents poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Victor's fake cops immediately opened fire. The children's screams echoed across the industrial district as bullets shattered windows and adults dove for cover. In the chaos, I saw Victor grab a little girl with blonde hair, couldn't have been older than 7, and press a gun to her head while backing toward one of the vans. Through my scope, I could see her face clearly. Terrified. crying, looking around for someone to save her. She looked exactly like Mason had looked in that coffin. I moved my crosshairs from Victor's head to his gun hand. More difficult shot, higher risk of missing, but if I could disable his weapon. The federal agents were advancing, but slowly. They couldn't risk the girl's life with aggressive tactics. Victor was shouting something in Spanish, using the child as a shield while his men continued their firefight with the agents. That's when I saw the real genius of his plan. This wasn't just about moving children. This was about creating a law enforcement disaster that would discredit the federal investigation into his operation. Dead agents, dead children, chaos that would make headlines and force government officials to bury the case rather than face public scrutiny. Victor was willing to kill everyone at that daycare to protect his larger network. My phone rang. Victor's number. "I know you're watching, Navy boy. Want to see what happens to little girls who get caught in crossfire?" Through my scope, I saw him press the gun harder against the child's temple. "Bring me my property, or I start executing kids one by one until the feds back off." "Mason's safe, Victor. You'll never find him." "Maybe not. But I can make sure you spend the rest of your life knowing that 12 children died because you decided to play hero." The federal agents were trying to negotiate, but Victor wasn't listening. He was looking up at the surrounding buildings, trying to spot my position. I had maybe 30 seconds before he moved the girl inside the van, where I'd lose the shot. 15 seconds before the federal agents would be forced to make a tactical decision that would get everyone killed. 10 seconds before Victor proved that some monsters can't be reasoned with or arrested, only eliminated. I exhaled slowly, settled my crosshairs, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled 812 meters in 1.2 seconds, striking Victor's gun hand with surgical precision. His weapon spun away across the asphalt as he screamed, releasing the little girl who immediately ran toward the federal agents. But something was wrong. Instead of chaos and confusion, the federal agents moved with choreographed precision. They weren't surprised by the sniper shot. They were expecting it. Through my scope, I watched Agent Harper Kellaway approach Victor with her weapon lowered, not raised. She spoke to him briefly, then helped him apply pressure to his wounded hand. They weren't arresting him. They were protecting him. My earpiece crackled. "Adrian, we've got a problem. Those federal agents aren't here to shut down Victor's operation. They're here to extract him." Nathaniel's voice was tight with concern. This whole thing was a setup. The police response, the shootout, even the kid he grabbed. It was theater designed to make Victor look like he was under attack instead of being rescued. I watched through my scope as the federal agents loaded Victor and 3 of his men into unmarked vehicles. The children were herded into a different van, not to safety, but to a new location where the operation could continue without interference. My phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. "You should have taken the deal, Adrian. Now you get to watch everything burn." That's when I understood the real scope of Victor's operation. He wasn't just a cartel informant working both sides. He was a federal asset being protected by corrupt agents who were profiting from his trafficking network. The raid was covered to relocate his operation before genuine law enforcement could discover what was really happening. I was never fighting just Victor. I was fighting a network that included people with federal badges and government authority. But they'd made one critical error. They assumed I was working alone. At 8:15 p.m., I received a call from Special Agent Dominic Torres, a man I'd served with in Afghanistan before he joined the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force. "Adrian, I need you to listen very carefully. We've been investigating Victor Morales for 8 months, but every time we get close, our operations get compromised by someone with inside information. Someone in the Bureau is protecting him. Not just protecting him, profiting from him. We have evidence that at least 4 federal agents are receiving payments from Victor's trafficking network. But we needed proof they were actively participating, not just taking bribes." The pieces clicked together. "You used me as bait. We used your situation to force them into the open. The raid tonight was genuine FBI, But the extraction team that took Victor was the corrupt agents trying to protect their asset. I felt sick. Those children are being tracked by GPS devices we planted in their clothing. We know exactly where they're being taken, and we have teams moving to intercept. But Adrian, we need Victor alive to testify against the federal agents who've been enabling his operation. Through binoculars, I watched the extraction vehicles disappear into dimmer traffic. Victor was wounded but free, and he still had access to resources I couldn't begin to imagine. There's something else, Torres continued. We intercepted communications between Victor and his government contacts. They know about your son's location. They're moving against the safe house tonight. My blood turned to ice. How long do I have? Maybe an hour. But Adrian, there's something you need to know about your wife. What about her? Brooke isn't just Victor's sister. She's been a federal informant for 3 years. Everything about your marriage, your family, even Mason's adoption, it was all part of a long-term operation to infiltrate military families for intelligence gathering. The words hit me harder than enemy fire. What are you saying? I'm saying your wife has been working for the same corrupt federal agents who protect Victor. She's been reporting on your activities, your contacts, your security clearances. The whole time you thought you were fighting to save your family, she was helping them destroy it. I sat in stunned silence, processing the betrayal. Every intimate moment, every shared secret, every time I'd trusted her with classified information about my deployments, all of it had been recorded and passed along to people who were using it against American military personnel. Where is she now? Unknown. She disappeared from your house an hour ago. But Adrian, we have reason to believe she's not just running away. We think she's moving to eliminate loose ends. What loose ends? You, Mason, anyone who can testify about what Victor's network has been doing. My phone beeped with an incoming call. Brooke's number. Adrian, we need to talk. I'm at the safe house where you left Mason. Come alone, or I start making decisions you won't like. The line went dead. Torres's voice was urgent in my ear. Adrian, don't go there. It's obviously a trap. But I was already moving toward my truck. Dom, you don't understand. She's not just threatening to kill Mason. She's threatening to deliver him to people who will do worse than kill him. We can get back up to the safe house in 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, my son will be gone forever. I started the engine and headed toward the mountains, knowing I was driving into an ambush designed by someone who knew all my tactics, all my weaknesses, all my pressure points. Someone who'd been studying me for 4 years, pretending to love me while planning my destruction. The mountain road to Quentin's safe house twisted through pine forests that looked black in my headlights. Every curve could hide an ambush. Every shadow could conceal a sniper. But I drove like I was racing death itself, because in many ways, I was. At 9:43 p.m., I pulled up to the cabin where I'd left Mason 6 hours ago. Every light was on, but the silence felt wrong. No movement in the windows. No sounds of a child playing or adults talking. I approached the front door with my sidearm drawn, using techniques I'd learned for clearing hostile buildings in Kandahar. The door was unlocked, never a good sign at a safe house. Inside, I found Quentin and Ruby sitting on the couch with their hands zip-tied behind their backs, duct tape over their mouths. Both alive, both terrified, both trying to tell me something with their eyes. Brooke emerged from the kitchen, Mason's small hand clasped in hers. My son looked confused but unharmed, like he didn't understand why Mommy had shown up to take him on another adventure. "Hello, honey," Brooke said, her voice carrying none of the warmth I'd fallen in love with 4 years ago. "We need to have that talk now." "Let him go, Brooke. This is between us." "Actually, it's not." She gestured to a chair where I could see a laptop displaying video feeds from multiple locations. "This is about national security, military intelligence, and a network that's bigger than you can possibly imagine." On the laptop screen, I could see live footage from inside military bases across 3 states. Security cameras in classified areas, communications equipment, Personnel files being accessed by people who shouldn't have clearance. What is this? This is what Victor's operation was really about. Not just trafficking children or smuggling drugs. Those were side businesses that funded the real mission. Infiltrating American military infrastructure through compromised personnel. She clicked to another screen showing files with familiar names. Soldiers I'd served with, base commanders I knew personally, intelligence officers who'd handled classified operations I participated in. Everyone Victor recruited wasn't chosen randomly. Every military family he targeted had connections to sensitive information, advanced weapons systems, or strategic planning. The trafficking was just the leverage to ensure cooperation. Mason tugged on Brooke's hand. "Mommy, I want to go home with Daddy. We're all going home soon, sweetheart. But first, Daddy needs to help Mommy with some important work." She pulled out a tablet and showed me satellite photos of foreign military installations. "Your sniper training gave you access to reconnaissance data that our clients in Moscow and Beijing find extremely valuable. Every deployment briefing you attended, every target assessment you made, every tactical report you filed, all of it has been compiled and sold to the highest bidders." The betrayal was so complete, so systematic, that I felt physically sick. "How long?" "Since before we met. The operation to recruit you began 18 months before I walked into that bar near Peterson AFB. We researched your psychological profile, your family background, your career trajectory. Everything about our relationship was designed to position you as an intelligence asset." Mason was getting restless, not understanding why the adults were talking instead of playing games or reading stories. "Daddy, are we going home now?" But before I could answer, Brooke continued with information that shattered everything I thought I knew about my own life. "Mason isn't just some random child we used for leverage, Adrian. He's your biological son." The word stopped my heart. "What? Remember Staff Sergeant Blake Morrison? The one whose daughter was killed when he tried to go to the FBI? His wife Clara was pregnant when we eliminated him. We kept her alive long enough to deliver the baby, then placed him with you through a fabricated adoption story." I stared at Mason, seeing features I'd attributed to genetics from his birth parents, features that now looked unmistakably like my own family. Blake Morrison was my cousin, second cousins, but close enough that Mason carries your genetic markers. We needed you to love him like your own child, to be willing to do anything to protect him. Blood made that bond unbreakable. The laptop chimed with an incoming video call. Victor's face appeared on screen, his wounded hand bandaged, but his smile vicious. "Hello, Adrian. Enjoying your family reunion. I thought the FBI had you." The FBI had some people who were pretending to be me while I conducted more important business. But now it's time to finish our original arrangement. Brooke set the tablet on the coffee table where Mason could see Victor's face. "Uncle Victor has a present for you, sweetheart." Victor held up a small remote control. "This controls explosive devices we planted at 12 different locations around Denver. Military family housing, elementary schools, daycare centers. Places where hundreds of children spend their time while their military parents work." He pressed a button, and one of the video feeds showed an explosion at what looked like a playground. That was just a demonstration. A small device in an empty area. The real devices are much larger and positioned where they'll cause maximum casualties. Mason started crying, not understanding what he was seeing, but sensing the danger. I reached for him, but Brooke stepped back. "Here's the deal, Adrian. You're going to use your security clearance to access the Peterson AFB Communications Center. You're going to download every classified file related to overseas operations in the Middle East. And you're going to deliver those files to an address we provide. And if I refuse?" Victor's smile widened. Then at midnight, 12 locations around Denver explode simultaneously. Hundreds of military families die, and the investigation will reveal that you planted those devices using explosives from your own military service record. The frame job was perfect. My fingerprints were already on military ordnance from legitimate training exercises. My psychological profile showed someone capable of extreme violence when his family was threatened. And my recent behavior, the missing Mason, the confrontation at the daycare, would look like escalating mental instability. You have 2 hours, Adrian. Midnight deadline. Those files, or Mason grows up knowing his daddy was responsible for the biggest domestic terrorism attack in American history. I looked at my son, my actual son, and felt something I'd never experienced in 12 years of combat. Pure, calculating rage mixed with absolute clarity of purpose. Okay, I said quietly. I'll get your files. Brooke smiled with relief, but Victor's expression remained suspicious. You're being awfully cooperative for someone who just learned his entire life was a lie. I'm being practical. You win. I get that now. I looked directly at Mason, but I want to say goodbye to him first, in case something goes wrong at the base. You have 5 minutes, Brooke said, checking her watch. Then we leave for Peterson. I knelt down to Mason's eye level, pulling him close for what looked like a father's desperate hug. But while Brooke and Victor watched this emotional scene, I was whispering instructions in my son's ear. When I count to 3, run to the back bedroom and hide under the bed. Don't come out until you hear Daddy's voice calling your name. Can you do that for me? Mason nodded against my shoulder, understanding that this was like the hide-and-seek games we played at home. I love you, buddy, more than you'll ever know. I love you too, Daddy. I stood up, looked at Brooke with what I hoped appeared to be defeated acceptance, then suddenly shouted 1. Mason bolted toward the hallway as I dove sideways, using the coffee table for cover while drawing my sidearm. Brooke reached for her weapon, but I was already firing. 2 shots center mass, the same target I'd trained on for thousands of hours. She dropped instantly. Victor's voice screamed from the laptop. Kill him. Kill them all. But Victor wasn't in the room, and I was. I cut Quentin and Ruby free, then grabbed the laptop showing Victor's location, a warehouse 15 minutes away. Call Torres, I told Quentin. Tell him Victor's at the address on this screen and that he has 12 bombs set to detonate at midnight. What about you? I was already moving toward my truck. I'm going to end this. The warehouse sat in an industrial district surrounded by empty lots and abandoned buildings, perfect for someone who needed privacy for illegal operations. I parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, using shadows and cover like I was back in Afghanistan. Through binoculars, I could see Victor's men positioned around the building. 6 guards, rotating patrols, professional spacing. But they were watching for vehicles and frontal assault, not for a single sniper who'd learned to be invisible. I climbed onto the roof of an adjacent building, assembling my rifle with practiced efficiency. The warehouse had skylights that gave me clear sight lines into the main floor. Through my scope, I could see Victor pacing near a table covered with electronic devices, the detonators for his bombs throughout Denver. A countdown clock showed 47 minutes until midnight. But Victor wasn't alone. Tied to chairs around the room were 5 children, all around Mason's age. The kids from the daycare who'd been rescued by corrupt federal agents earlier that evening. They were being used as human shields, positioned so that any assault on the building would result in their deaths. My phone buzzed with a text from Victor. I know you're out there, Navy boy. Come inside and let's finish this like men. Or watch these kids die at midnight along with everyone else. I called Torres. Dom, I've got eyes on Victor. He's got 5 hostages and enough explosives to level downtown Denver. Federal response teams are en route. ETA 20 minutes. We don't have 20 minutes. Those bombs detonate at midnight whether Victor's alive or dead. Then what do you propose? I looked through my scope at Victor, who was now standing directly behind one of the children, a little girl who couldn't have been older than 6. I propose we remember that some targets are worth taking impossible shots for. The distance was 400 meters. Wind speed was minimal, but Victor was using a child as a human shield, which meant I had maybe a 2-inch margin of error. Miss by even an inch, and I'd kill an innocent child. But don't take the shot. and 12 locations throughout Denver would explode in 34 minutes. I controlled my breathing, settled my crosshairs, and did what I'd been trained to do. I took the shot that no one else could make. Victor's head snapped back as the bullet found its target. He dropped instantly, falling away from the little girl who started screaming but remained unharmed. The warehouse erupted in chaos as Victor's men realized their leader was dead. But they were too focused on finding the sniper to notice Torres's federal response team surrounding the building. Within 10 minutes, all 5 children were safe, and bomb disposal experts were working to defuse the devices scattered throughout Denver. At 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before Victor's midnight deadline, the last explosive device was neutralized. I sat on that rooftop until sunrise, thinking about my son who was really my son, my wife who was never really my wife, and a 4-year marriage that had been nothing but an intelligence operation designed to destroy American military security. But Victor had made one final miscalculation. He'd assumed that learning the truth would break me. Instead, it had freed me to do what I did best, eliminate threats to the people I loved. Mason was safe. The children were safe. And Victor Morales would never threaten another military family again. Sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving long enough to protect the next generation from the monsters who try to destroy yours. 6 months later, I sat on the front porch of our new house in Montana, watching Mason chase fireflies in the yard as the sun set behind snow-capped mountains. He'd grown 3 inches and gained 15 pounds since that terrible night. But more importantly, he laughed again. The pure, innocent sound of a child who felt safe in his world. The official investigation had taken 4 months to unravel completely. 17 corrupt federal agents were indicted. Victor's trafficking network, which had operated across 8 states, was dismantled entirely. 143 children were rescued and returned to their families. Special Agent Torres had offered me a position with the FBI's counterterrorism unit, but I'd declined. I'd had enough of hunting monsters for one lifetime. Instead, I started a security consulting firm that specialized in protecting military families from the kinds of predators who'd targeted us. Business was unfortunately booming. Apparently, our story wasn't as unique as I'd hoped. "Daddy, look," Mason called out, holding a mason jar with 3 fireflies glowing inside. I caught the lightning bugs. "That's amazing, buddy. But you know what we do with fireflies after we catch them? Let them go so they can find their families." He opened the jar and watched the tiny lights drift up toward the darkening sky. It was a ritual we'd developed, catching beautiful things just long enough to appreciate them, then setting them free. Mason ran back to me and climbed onto my lap, settling in like he belonged there. Which he did, more than he'd ever know. "Daddy, are the bad men ever coming back?" It was a question he asked every few weeks, usually when nightmares reminded him of coffins and scary uncles and nights when Daddy had to leave to fight monsters. "No, son. The bad men are gone forever. And even if new bad men showed up, Daddy would protect you. That's what daddies do. Even if they were really, really scary. Especially if they were really, really scary." He nodded with the absolute faith that children place in their parents, then looked up at me with eyes that reminded me so much of my own father. "Daddy, can I ask you something important?" "Always. When I grow up, can I help protect kids like you protected me?" The question hit me harder than I'd expected. This 8-year-old boy, who'd survived trafficking attempts and psychological torture, wanted to spend his life protecting others from the same evil. "If that's what you want to do, Mason, I'll teach you everything I know about being strong enough to protect people who can't protect themselves. But first, you just get to be a kid, okay?" "Okay. But when I'm older, I want to be just like you." I held him tighter, thinking about the irony of a child wanting to emulate a man who'd spent 12 years as a professional killer. But maybe that was exactly the point. Sometimes the people who've seen the worst of humanity are the ones most committed to protecting the best of it. As the last firefly disappeared into the Montana sky, I realized something I'd never understood during all those years of military service. True victory wasn't about eliminating enemies or completing missions or protecting national interests. True victory was sitting on your front porch with your son, watching him grow up safe and happy and innocent, knowing that he'd never have to experience the kind of evil that had once threatened to destroy your family. The monsters were gone. The network was dismantled. The children were safe. And tomorrow, Mason and I would wake up in a house where the only secrets were surprise birthday parties and Christmas presents hidden in closets. That was a kind of revenge I could live with. Before we say goodbye, I have an important question for you. What moment in this story affected you the most emotionally? Was it when Adrian found Mason in that coffin, when he discovered the truth about Brooke's betrayal, or when he took that impossible shot to save those children? Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from around the world. I love hearing from viewers in different countries and cities. Your support means everything to a storyteller like me. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible content. Your engagement helps me bring you the most thrilling, heart-pounding revenge stories every week. Most importantly, I want to create the stories you want to hear. Drop a comment and tell me what types of stories you're passionate about. Military thrillers, family betrayal, undercover operations, or maybe something completely different. Do you prefer stories about fathers protecting their children, wives discovering dark secrets, or soldiers using their skills for justice? The more you tell me about your preferences, the better I can craft stories that will absolutely captivate you. I read every single comment and use your feedback to create content that matches exactly what you're looking for. See you in the next epic thriller and revenge story. Until then, stay safe and keep those you love even closer. Story is finished.